Chinese netizens are criticizing the illustrations in a Chinese math textbook. Some of them are gross, and others are just really weird. Welcome to Chine Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. Finally, there's been an outcry on the Chinese internet over something truly shocking and horrible that's been happening under the radar in China for a decade. No, not that. No, not that either. It's even worse. It's been discovered that the illustrations in a math textbook are tragically ugly. Won't someone think of the children? Even children themselves are concerned.
妈妈，我告诉你，我之前已经跟你说了，这些图片好丑。你让数学老师换一个数学书好不好？吐舌头，全班都吐舌头。这个课代表站在这里好像是课代表都吐舌头。我一看这个图片就做噩梦。
Okay, I've heard of math giving people nightmares, but not math textbook illustrations. This book is part of an entire series for grades 1 to 6. They were published around 2013, which I hate to admit is nearly a decade ago. Why did no one care about this for almost a decade? I have no idea. But the Chinese internet is now criticizing these illustrations for being spooky, ugly, racist, and exuding negative energy. Can someone explain to me why this girl has a tattoo on her leg? That's negative energy right there. But not just that, the drawings were also being criticized for being pornographic. This image shows a young girl tripping over a jump rope, revealing her underwear. Another image shows two young boys inappropriately touching two girls, with one boy pulling on a girl's skirt while another holds a girl's chest. And this is from a math textbook? Does 2 + 2 equal sexual harassment? And on top of that, a lot of the boys are drawn with unnecessary detail around the crotch. I guess this math book just subtracted too much from the pants. In late May, the hashtag for People's Education Press mathematics teaching materials soared to the #1 trending topic on Chinese social media. The People's Education Press is a large publishing house overseen by China's Ministry of Education. That means that for anything to get published, it has to meet strict censorship requirements. But those censorship requirements are designed to screen out bad politics, not bad taste. Hu Xijin, the former editor-in-chief of my favorite state-run media, the Global Times, has taken a stance on Chinese social media. He wants an official investigation into those books and demands the creators explain their motives. I get it. There's a lot to explain with weird illustrations like this. But it's not just that math book series that's getting attention. The issue has snowballed to include a bunch of other children's books with questionable illustrations. Like the book series, A Lot of Strange Things. It's meant to teach children about mysterious wonders of nature and life, which, judging from the book cover, should answer questions like, where do grandmas come from? What do dump trucks do with used confetti? Is it okay to touch toilets? And how should a young woman properly introduce herself to a penguin? But I don't see how this illustration of a dog licking a girl's butt explains anything mysterious. It really just raises more questions like, who's the weirdo that drew this in a children's book? And while we're at it, there's a 2012 picture book called Sweat. Maybe it's about why people sweat. Well, here's a picture from the book. It's two boys licking a girl's arm. One boy says, "Sister, you are so pretty. What flavor is your sweat?" And the other boy says, "Oh, it's also salty." Is this book saying that black people lick people's sweat? And why is no one asking why one of the girl's arms is 7 feet long? But believe it or not, what I've shown you so far is the mild stuff. It gets worse after the break. Welcome back. There are some pretty weird illustrations in Chinese children's books. But in a lot of them, it's the written content that's more disturbing. Like this one. The rooster said, "The master is such a bum. I have so many wives, I can be close to whoever I like, and yet here the master is unable to handle a single wife." The farmer listened to the rooster's words. He locked his wife in the house and beat her until she begged for mercy. After that, the two were on good terms again as if nothing had happened. And in the bottom corner, there's a line that's, I guess, the moral of the story. It says, if the farmer's wife weren't so overbearing, she would not have suffered physically. The farmer and the rooster might look happy in the illustration, but I don't think the farmer's wife is. And then there's the book Innocent Mother, which was a part of the Moe's Mischief series by famous children's literature author Yang Hongying. In the book, the main character, Ma Xiaotiao, was very troubled because his mom forced him to play the piano even though he had no musical skills. And when I say very troubled, I mean that in this panel, Ma Xiaotiao asks his friend, "What's the best way to commit suicide?" And his buddy in the bowl haircut suggests, "Tie a rope around your neck and find a tree to hang it on. Or find a tall building, flap your wings and fall down." That's horrible advice. You know, I was going to make a joke about the best way to commit suicide in China, but that's too dark even for me. Meanwhile, Chinese internet users have been complaining that other countries have nicer textbooks with more beautiful illustrations. Netizens have even been marveling at how beautiful Taiwanese textbooks are. But of course, foreign textbooks are banned in Chinese public schools. Doesn't mean Chinese state-run media won't use this opportunity to twist this public uproar into something supporting the Chinese Communist Party's rhetoric. Hu Xijin said, "It seems that our education and publishing position has really been lost and has been occupied by evil forces, and we need a decisive counterattack." And this article says it's time to sound the ideological security alarm, because children's textbooks are a new battlefield for the West's cultural infiltration. Yes, that's who we should blame for all these terrible children's books: America. That's not a joke. Some people called that original terrible math book secretly pro-American because some of the kids were dressed in stars and stripes. Chinese nationalists even accused the illustrator of being a spy for the CIA. I mean, really? That's what the CIA is doing? Drawing bad illustrations in Chinese children's books that no one notices for almost 10 years? But according to the Chinese Communist Party, this kind of Western cultural infiltration is no laughing matter, because they're going to conflate this cultural infiltration with what's happening in Xinjiang, a place where the Chinese regime is justifying their genocide of the Uyghurs by claiming that school classrooms were a secret place where extremists look to spread their dangerous ideologies. They recently sentenced the former head of the Xinjiang Education Department, who's an ethnic Uyghur, to a suspended death sentence for the books he approved. Now, the Chinese Communist Party had approved those same textbooks for years, until they decided it was too dangerous to allow books that include Uyghur history and culture. And then they charged him with inciting ethnic hatred and separatist thoughts. That's ironic, because here's an example of an approved Chinese textbook called The Sparkling Red Star. It's based off a Chinese propaganda film made during the Cultural Revolution. The story of a boy whose dad fights for the communists and whose mom gets killed. So then the boy, who looks like an 8-year-old in this book, ties up the evil landlord and douses him with gasoline, and then lights him on fire so he can go off and join the revolution. It literally says that the landlord loses his evil criminal life in the fire. Yeah, that doesn't incite hatred. It's totally normal behavior for a child. You know, there's a reason all these kids grow up to be such horrible communist officials. So I think by comparison, a little arm licking is not that bad. It's deeply weird, but just not that bad. But as I said, it's not really about the illustrations themselves. It's about the politics. Which brings me back to the original controversy about the so-called tragically ugly textbooks. The People's Education Press made a statement on their official Weibo account to announce they're doing a thorough investigation into the matter, and they've included a feedback email address. I wonder whose job it'll be to check that inbox. The Ministry of Education also released an official statement. It announced that after investigation, the People's Education Press has been required to rectify and reorganize textbook illustrators to come out with new and refined textbooks by September 2022. Importantly, they made it clear that these textbooks will adhere to the correct political direction and value orientation, promote the excellent Chinese culture, and conform to the public's aesthetic habits. And that makes me wonder whether the Chinese Communist Party actually stirred up this controversy in the first place. They certainly didn't censor it because they let it become a trending topic. And it just happens to be a great excuse to rewrite all the textbooks. So get ready in September for a new wave of extra nationalistic school material that your children will have no choice but to memorize. They'll probably look a lot like these. Teaching children about Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. You've got some important learning to do, kids. Now it's time for me to answer a question from a fan who supports China Uncensored on the crowdfunding website Patreon or the exclusive social media platform Locals. Ringleader asks on Patreon, "Hey Chris, if the Putin regime should collapse and the government is thrown into chaos or a more Western-friendly leadership takes control, do you think the CCP would be crazy/arrogant enough to try to take some of Russia's eastern territories?" Well, Ringleader, so far there's no evidence that the CCP has coveted Russian territory. In fact, in 1999, then CCP leader Jiang Zemin held a meeting with Russian leader Boris Yeltsin. It was a weird meeting. And in that meeting, Jiang Zemin unconditionally gave away more than 1 million square kilometers of land in northeast China to Russia. But since then, the CCP has coveted territory north of the Arctic Circle. If it had even one village that was technically part of China that bordered the Arctic Ocean, China could call itself an Arctic state. And that would give it leverage to control shipping in the region. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some kind of deal like that in the future. Why take over territory by force when you can just make a deal with a weakened Russia? Thanks for your question, Ringleader. Thank you for supporting China Uncensored on Patreon. Be like Ringleader and visit patreon.com/China Uncensored. You can directly contribute to China Uncensored, which is important because viewer support is our main source of revenue. And as a thank you, we'll give you some cool perks, like being able to ask me a question on the show. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.